The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy granted TotalEnergies environmental authorization to conduct exploration off the south coast. The company will be able to drill up to 5 exploration wells in the area, which is roughly between Cape Town and Cape Agulhas. For more on this now, we are joined by strategic lead at the Green Connection, Liz McDaid. Liz, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. Firstly, let's start here. What is your take on the latest move by the Department of Mineral Resources?
Well, it's very disappointing because we are sitting in a climate crisis. We have to look to the future. We've experienced climate change impacts. If we look at the KZN floods, the droughts that have happened. So what are we doing? We're digging a pit for ourselves to fall in if we carry on authorizing processes that will lead to more fossil fuels.
Clearly, you are quite unhappy about this decision by the Department of Mineral Resources. What does gas and oil exploration offshore drilling actually entail? If you could just explain to our viewers.
So what they've got authorization to do is to do exploration wells. In other words, they're going to go and drill into the ocean bed to see if they can find oil and gas, which they have already, from their own studies so far, they think there might be something underneath there that they can find. But our issue is, why are we doing this? Because this will have an impact on the sea life. And not only that, if we are to end up drilling and getting oil and gas, there's the risk of oil spills. And the risk of oil spills can mean toxic chemicals in the water, an impact on sea life, but not only sea life, but on all the coastal communities along that area that depend on the coast for their livelihoods, for fishing, for tourism, and other small businesses. So the ocean, we believe, and South Africa has a long coastline, so the ocean, we believe, we should be defending it, particularly from a climate change perspective, and also for the protection of the livelihoods of people along the coast. And these kinds of authorizations, we believe, are taking us backwards because they are pushing a fossil fuel agenda, which has no place we believe, in the future of South Africa.
And Liz, surely with what you've just detailed to us, it does have an impact on people's lives, especially those living along the coast.
Thousands of people, and just remember how bad the unemployment issue is in South Africa. So, and food security is huge. So what we are seeing is that this is basically the government taking steps to put at risk the livelihoods of thousands of families along the coast. And why would we do that? We don't need the oil and gas. We can't afford the oil and gas from a climate change perspective. Such moves could lead to some sort of putting in jeopardy just transition money that we are supposed to be getting from international partners who caused the problem, climate change, so they must pay to help us transition. So why are we now putting that at risk by pushing for fossil fuel? We already heard the president saying they want to extend the coal-fired power stations. So now what are we wanting to now go into the ocean and drill out more oil and gas? How are we able to do that with any integrity? And what does that mean for future generations who are going to be left with this burden to clean up?
And Liz, I understand that as Green Connection, you are studying this and you are actually planning on appealing, this authorization by the Department of Mineral Resources.
Yes, our legal team is looking at it as we speak, because I think there's only 20 days before we have to appeal. But certainly from what we've heard and the unhappiness of people on the ground, and what the science tells us, we certainly believe that there is a good chance of success if we appeal. And so we will be preparing an appeal to submit.
And I'm sure you've actually spoken to a number of South Africans who may be affected by this. What are they saying with this latest move from the department?
So people are very angry because they feel they're being ignored and that their lives don't count. And I think for all South Africans who are sitting in the dark, they can sympathize with this idea that, we are just being used and abused, and we're not sure. We didn't get ourselves into this mess, and now we are stuck. So those coastal people that we have spoken to are expressing some of the dissatisfaction and frustration, that why are we not listening to the voices of those affected when we make these decisions? And government seems to be just plowing ahead without regard to its own people.
What are the implications for years to come, especially when you're looking at marine life? It's something that you did also then touch on a bit earlier on in our conversation. At the same time, we're also dealing with the impacts of climate change. What are the implications, for the next few years to come, should something like this continue?
So if we carry on this route, what we can envisage that the really healthy marine systems that we are trying to sustain to ensure that there are livelihoods for people into the future and for communities along the coast, those are likely to be at risk. So, in a similar way, under COVID, our tourism industry suffered. Now you can imagine a similar kind of suffering that would take place, but now it would be long-term. You would find that people's livelihoods, so food security could be threatened, and then the toxicity, the impacts of that could last for more than a decade, because what they're finding in other areas where they've had these huge oil spills, that there's a lot of toxic chemicals that are released that have long-term health impacts. So, for example, people who help clean up the oil spills are finding themselves with health problems like years into the future. And then we have to look at, so now we have made a mess of our ocean. What are we going to do with this oil and gas we're getting out? Who are we going to sell it to? Because the whole world is moving to transition. It takes about 10 years from where we are now to get a production well going, according to the oil companies. So, in 10 years' time, what will the world look like? So is it worth it for us to take this risk of going for this fossil fuel, potentially risking livelihoods, food security in our ocean, and then at the end of the day finding we can't sell it to anybody, we can't use it, and it was all for nothing? It really doesn't seem to be a wise decision in our view.
Does government have any other options, or you as Green Connection, are you saying that, well, just leave it as is? Should government then look at other ways and other means of getting the access to this? Can you maybe explore that?
So why are we looking for this oil and gas? So part of the reason which was sort of thrown at us was that, oh no, well, load shedding, but we're not going to be in load shedding for 10 years. That's not going to be happening. So that's not going to happen. That's not going to solve that problem. So then the issue is we'll sell it, and the money will somehow trickle down from wherever it lands, and it will help our economy. I think many people viewing this will probably think, yeah, we've heard that one before. But even if that wasn't a genuine thing, as I said, in 10 years' time, we will be very different. Who are we going to sell this oil to? And in terms of alternatives, we already seen the government is shifting. There's a big talk of electric vehicles, renewable energy, battery storage, all these new things that are coming up. So by the time in 10 years' time, we're probably all going to be driving electric vehicles, or probably there's some other spacecraft type thing that we haven't even thought of now. But the world is changing very rapidly. And so to rely on things from 50 years ago is just, we're going to be left behind. And we really don't need to be. We've got abundant solar, abundant wind. We can clearly make enough energy with our renewables, with some battery storage, and then we can really push into what our government seems to be pushing as well, is electric vehicles. Right. And remember, Europe is already pushing for electric vehicles, so they won't import our cars unless they are geared for electricity. And of course, we are facing the carbon tax, so carbon border tax.